Greetings, Benjamin J from BENZTRAINZ with another in the series. Well, another motor made out of parts. I just got this one assembled using Grossman's black nylon self-lubricating intermediate gear. Now I ran into a problem with this one is, of course, I did not have the spring for the contactor. So I'm going to use the sponge trick. This is a slice of yellow sponge. As you see, cut this with a razor blade. So it's about a 1/16 of an inch thick, maybe an 1/8 of an inch thick, something like that, with a hole in the center. And if you don't have the spring, you just take a small piece of sponge, stretch it over the center post, take your contactor, line it up, snap it into position, and an instant replacement for the spring until you get one. As you see, it works absolutely perfectly. There are motors that I've done this to that are running, I don't know, 7 months now, something like that, without replacing the spring. Anyway, tomorrow I'll go down to Ace, go through their springs, and find a couple of light wire coil springs that I can cut into pieces and use for the contactor. Anyway, I just wanted to do a video on this motor. Now I'm running out of parts. I have lots of parts. I'm just running out of wheels. That's the problem. So I just put this one together, and this thing has been sitting in the parts box for probably a year, something like that. So I went through 3 armatures, found an armature that worked, and then I had to go through the wheel bearings. Now, what people don't realize is that the pre-war motor and the post-war motor use different size wheel bearings and axles. So you have to go through the parts you have, or in this case, the parts I had, to find the correct parts that will fit. Now it has 2 mismatched push rods. As you can see, this one is flat silver, this one is embossed. But it's all I had. Like I said, I'm running out of wheels. So in any case, I'll have to buy some more junkers to replenish my parts supply. But anyway, using that intermediate gear, since I have 4 of them, it gave me a chance to build at least 2 motors. I built one last night and just got this one finished. And it runs well. Ran it on the bench, getting ready to put it on the rail. Going to run it around and see how it goes. So just want to do a video on this sponge for the main contactor. It's a great saver, because if you don't have that spring, you can't run the motor in most cases. And in this case, I didn't have the spring. And I looked and looked and looked, went through all my parts, went through the bottom of the parts box. No spring. I must have used the last one on that last motor I built. So I used the sponge. And as you see, it works absolutely perfectly. It's a great expedient. You can leave it on there for a very, very long time with no problem. Anyway, let's put this on the rail, getting ready to run it. Have not run it yet on the rail. I ran it on the bench. So use the adapter, snap it over the rear axle, put it on the rail. I've got this camera right in the way. Yeah, let me move the tripod. Anyway, I just wanted to do a video on showing you that sponge. Anyway, put this on the rail, pulling 9 cars as usual. Just got this finished, made completely out of junk parts. As you see, it runs absolutely perfectly. Runs forward only, of course, just like the one I built last night. Because these were in the parts box because they didn't run at all. And when the E unit fails, the motor just simply won't run, especially if the coil has gone out. There's really nothing you can do. You can jam a toothpick into it to try to get it to run forward. But it's just easier and a lot quicker, a lot more reliable just to bypass the E unit. So no great loss, because I am not a fan of these things starting in reverse. So anyway, I threw this together out of parts, a lot of mismatched parts in it. But as you see, it's up and running. And a good tip about that sponge, if you don't have the spring, all is not lost. You can still get the motor running. Like I said, that sponge will last for virtually ever. I've got a couple of these that I built with sponges on them that have been running almost a year, something like that. So when I get some new springs, in fact, I might do a video from Ace Hardware show you where to find those springs. I bought several of them. I thought I had some left, but obviously I used the last chunk last night. But the sponge is a great expedient. It works, it gets it up and running, and like I said, it'll run forever. Literally forever. So if you don't have a spring, you can always find a sponge. Anyway, it works, it runs nice, cleaned it up, it doesn't look bad at all. And had to solder a wire onto the brush plate, of course. And for being made out of junk parts, it actually doesn't look too bad. As you see, like I said, it's got mismatched push rods. This one's embossed. This one is flat silver. But even so, it works. It's a running motor. And that new gear gave me a chance to start putting some of these together. And I had always been looking for intermediate gears, and as I found them, of course, I used them. So when I ordered these from Grossman's, I talked to Gary over at Trains in the Basement. He ordered them first, and I asked him, you know, what did he think of them? And they work. There's no problem with them. They're inexpensive. It's a drop-on replacement for the original. They'll last virtually forever. That being a relative term, they'll last the rest of my life, no doubt. And they're self-lubricating. Since they're black nylon, they have a natural lubricity, and so you don't have to grease them. And there's no danger of these things tearing up the wheels or the output gear for the armature. Anyway, another motor made completely out of junk parts. As you see, it works. It runs well. I'll find a body to stick this in, and I'll have another, either a 400 or 490, depending on what shell I have. Have to go through the parts and see. But anyway, I just want to do a quick video on this. As I always stress, don't overlook the junk. Like I keep saying, if you have a wheel puller and a press to put the wheels back on, you can fix anything you can find on eBay, regardless of what the problem is with it. If you have a supply of parts, in many cases, you can just repair the motor. But if it needs a part, you've got to have a replacement part. Otherwise, you're absolutely stuck, which is why a lot of these wound up in the parts box. A lot of them needed that intermediate gear. All of them had a problem with the E-unit, so the motor wouldn't run at all. A couple of them ran backwards, and that was it. You know, unless you really want to pull these things completely apart, then dismantle that E-unit, and in many cases, you can't repair it because of the oxide or damage to it. A lot of times it's been overheated and distorted, and you're stuck. If the E-unit goes out, these motors will not run, period. So it's a really simple and quick expedient just to bypass the E-unit. And so you run power to this side of the coil, run this side of the coil to the brush plate, and you're up and running. It'll run forward only, but it will run. This was an absolutely dead motor. And these new intermediate gears brought this thing back to life. So it's up and running. It looks nice. I'll put this in a shell, and another new locomotive made completely out of junk. So just want to do a quick video. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email. BENZTRAINZ@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for watching.